Good evening, gentlemen. I'm going to have a small talk with you as usual, and I'm going to talk about whether there's going to be a war between India and China. Now, very important topic because China and India are the two most populous countries in the world. Two of the most populous countries, and you add up both of them, that means there are almost 2.8 billion people in the world. And both of them are nuclear powered, big economies. Of course, the Chinese economy is five times the Indian economy, but India is number fifth on the list of the world's biggest economies, while China is number two. And India and China have got a history of a border dispute for the last 60 years. And they had a war in 1962, another encounter in 1967, and after that, for the next 55 years, there was no border clash except for physical fist fights between the Indian and Chinese soldiers, and only once the Chinese fired in the air. That's about a year back. So it's been a peaceful border in that sense. There have been no casualties as such, other than in the physical fights where the Indians lost about 20 killed and the Chinese claim they lost only four. But that's got to be taken with a pinch of salt because China is a totalitarian state and they won't say how many they have killed, how many of their persons got killed. Now the question arises, both the countries have taken a very strong stand on the border line. India is not compromising right from 1959, though it is basically the Indian fault that they had left thousands of square miles in the Aksai Chin and other areas untenanted, unlooked after, unadministered. They left it as a barren land, believing that Lord Krishna will help them out. It doesn't happen that way in real life. And that vacant land was taken over by the Chinese. They first had a road being made from Tibet to Xinjiang through Aksai Chin, which is a big area, almost as big as Punjab, which has been taken over by the Chinese. India never recognized it, and our maps still show Aksai Chin as a part of India, though there's not even 1% chance that India will ever be able to get that area back. Similarly, on the McMahon line, the Chinese earlier were ready for a settlement on the McMahon line, and in fact, Chow En-lai came to India with a proposal, and his proposal was very simple. When he came in 1959, I think, he proposed that China will recognize the McMahon line. You recognize Aksai Chin as part of China. But somehow Nehru was not guided properly, and maybe he had grandiose schemes as a great third world leader. He didn't agree, he didn't think Mao Zedong up to his level, and that resulted in the border clash. 80,000 Chinese versus 15,000 Indians, and the Indian army was licking its wounds. Thousands taken POW. And since that time, the Indians were playing second fiddle to China because the governments which came after the demise of Nehru probably accepted the superiority of China, and even the defense minister once made a silly statement with China being a very great power or something like that when Manmohan Singh was the prime minister. But things changed in 1914 and the peaceful border became alive. The Chinese had been encroaching on the border for many years during the Congress government's regime's sway. And they wanted to continue doing the same thing, which was put a stop to because Modi built up an infrastructure in the border area. He started that roads, tunnels, airfields. Chinese couldn't countenance it, and tension built up. China still wanted to do away with the salami slicing, take away Indian territory. Even I think up to 2014, they took about 2,000 square miles of Indian territory in the Ladakh region. That's why China says that they do not recognize the LOC as a border. They have only what is called the LAC, that is the line of actual control. And China says they have no border with India in Ladakh. Now, this is a very significant statement. Two totally opposing opinions. India is saying there is an LAC, line of actual control, which must be honored. China says we don't believe in it. We don't have a border with India. Whereas the Indians say they have a border of 3,300 kilometers with China, Chinese say we have only 2,200 or something like that. So this is a very, very dangerous flashpoint. But then a battle can only be between two equals. There are some other factors also which come into play. And despite this border problem with China, we have a massive trade with China. As per the latest figures I've got, our trade is going over to $135 billion, and we have imports from China of $100 billion. Now, if you're going to have that magnitude of trade, it doesn't stand to reason that India and China are going to fight. Economics is important because China is earning a lot by selling India $100 billion worth of goods. And India also is gaining because we have a big employment population based on Chinese imports. A lot of Indian motor vehicles, other ancillary industries all over India, including the mobile phones, they trace their pedigree to China. And recently, when the chips had stopped coming from China, the automobile industry tanked. They could produce the cars. And with the help of China, India is now number third in the global list of car manufacturing nations. So, what is going to happen? Will there be an India China clash? The Chinese are very, very clever, where the Indians are foolish. I'll say that. We have statements by the Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, talking of giving muh tod jawab. I mean, it's strong reply to China if they attack. And then we have the home minister making a statement in parliament that we'll take back Aksai Chin, kuch bhi ho jaye, jaan bhi chali jaye. That means even if we lose our lives, we will take Aksai Chin back. Now, these are brazenly provocative statements. I've not heard of any Chinese, by and large, of leader of substance like Yi making any such statements like this, or their defense minister making some statements like this. The Chinese don't talk. That is the difference. Well, we talk. We talk without doing anything. Chinese keep on doing and don't talk. So there's a marked difference in the strategy of both the countries. India is a democracy, and here is a free opinion. So the government has to pander to the taste of the masses, feed them with some information because they want to win the election. While in China, there is no question of winning the election. He is president for a long time till he dies. And the Chinese have a one-party system, a dictatorship, totalitarian state. They can get away with anything in China, but not they can get away in India. So that is the crux of the difference. The Chinese perhaps realize it. That's why they don't keep reacting to every Indian statement. But the point arises that China is building up a tremendous infrastructure in Tibet. They have built a super rail line to Lhasa, and now they have a line, I'm told, which is coming right up to the Northeast Frontier Agency, that is the McMahon line. And then also, they have built up a tremendous infrastructure and villages in the border areas. They have been able to wean away Nepal from India, and Bhutan also is very wary of fighting the Chinese, mind you, because these people know, even the Bhutanese know, India is supposed to defend Bhutan against China, but I don't think the Indians have a stomach to fight for Bhutan with China. China will probably have its way in due course of time with Bhutan also, like with Nepal. Nepal, we had centuries old traditions, relations, and net result of what has happened is pretty sad because the Chinese, at the behest of the Chinese, the Nepalis began to claim so many areas which are part of India as part of Nepal. And Nepal started doing a balancing act with China, equating India and China together. And now we have a Maoist regime coming in power in Nepal. And so long as the king was there, the monarchy was there, it was pro-India, but they're no longer pro-India. They're not anti-India, but definitely they're not pro-India. So the Chinese have been able to wean away the Indian nations on the Himalayan border towards them, away from India, And in any case, Pakistan is their biggest trump card. Whether Pakistan economy is bankrupt or they are having runaway inflation, people dying of hunger, all that is not relevant as far as China is concerned. All they want to use Pakistan is as a ploy to needle India. They don't have to do anything. If at all there's a war, they will instigate Pakistan to fight India. Chinese themselves will not do. So I come down to the basic question that will there be India-China clash? I have a one-line answer for you. There will be no clash. There will be no border war like the one in 62. There could be a handheld skirmish continuing here and there, and the Chinese are continuing to move forward. And because the Indian leadership is scared to name China as an aggressor anytime, I've not come across uh, the Indian Prime Minister saying anything volatile against China like he does against Pakistan. If you remember, just before the Balakot strikes, and after about 40 Jawans or soldiers of the border security, the CRPF, had been killed, he made some very aggressive statements on Pakistan, but he hasn't made any such statement like this on China. And all the time he's been making statements like that we are defending ourselves, we will not allow China to come forward and all that. But in actual fact, the ground reality is pretty different. India does not want to clash with China. Let's accept this fact. That is the basis of what I'm saying. And does China want to clash with India? No. Because why? Because fighting a clash or a war with India is not conducive to for China at all. China's bigger danger is the United States and Japan in the South China Sea. There are 50,000 American troops positioned in South Korea. So for that is the bigger priority for China. The South China Sea with its rich minerals is what China wants. So China's priority number one is America and the Eastern Front. Then India is a lower priority because they know we can have our way with India without fighting. It's a very sad and sorry state of affairs because the policies which were laid down by Pandit Nehru way back in 1949-50, when India held all the aces and he gave them away and he is now holding only Ikka Dukka, any ones and twos. India gave away the rights in Tibet. Tibet was a buffer state created by the British and we threw it away. We threw away the entire Aksai Chin for a song. Not even a dance was there, we just handed it over. And then we didn't have the capability to take it back. But Nehru was always scared of the army being a big force. And it's on record, but one of the very silly statements I remember when one of the chiefs of the Indian army, a British general, had gone to Nehru and told him that here's the plan for the reorganizing the army. And he got wild. He said, we believe in ahimsa. I want the army. You can take it away. And if required, I can manage with police force. Now, you can well imagine if a man is going to talk like that to the Prime Minister of India, what you can expect. So that policy is continued. Modi has brought in a bit of a change. But to say there is a substantial change is not correct. He has built up the border infrastructure. He's trying, he's positioned more troops on the border. But then he's weakened the Indian army by so many other actions. He has alienated the Nepalis by getting the Agnipit scheme going, and Nepalis are not very happy about it at all. The army is on a very low priority, I think, the way I look at it. Pakistan maintains the army of about 750,000 soldiers. India has only 1.2 million, which is not a very big force for a country which is 5 times the size of Pakistan. And then you have the looming border in Tibet, where the Chinese have set up their biggest operational command. Chinese call them theater commands, and the Tibet command is their biggest command. But of course, it is important, but the more important ones for the Chinese are the ones which are facing Taiwan and the South China Sea. Because the real test of strength is going to be there, not with India. India, in any case, doesn't want a conflict with China. So I think why the Indian army has not been built up to a substantial level is one of the reasons is that the Indian think tank has concluded that they are not going to fight China. It is a very difficult statement I'm making, but that is what it appears to me as a historian. The Indian leadership has decided that they will not fight with China. They will engage with China at every level. And that is the reason we have a trade of $130 billion with China. And despite China doing a lot of provocative acts, like making statements on Kashmir, not recognizing the reorganization of Kashmir, not recognizing Arunachal Pradesh as a part of India, not recognizing the McMahon line, the Indians are not retaliating in the same manner. We don't say anything about Hong Kong. We don't say anything about Xinjiang. We don't say anything about Tibet. Because the main purpose is not to antagonize China, and if China is saying something, well, let them do it. So, gentlemen, India, in my view, has not been able to match the Chinese, and we will not be able to match them. I don't think India will fight a war with China. The entire aim of the Indian political leadership is to avoid a scrap with China. Irrespective of the very chauvinistic and provocative statements coming from some of the top correspondents and so called military experts, the fact remains that India is not conditioned to fight China. And China knows it, and China also is not interested in fighting India. They may have a physical fight here and there, that's about all. Because China is gaining tremendously. And I would say this is the masterstroke of Mr. Modi, because he's trying to entice China economically into an embrace. And the Chinese are in a half embrace already. Another policy which India is following is to back Russia. Now, Russia is in a very close military alliance with China. And definitely, at some level, the Russian foreign minister and others will be putting some pressure on China to go slow on India. So when you add up all these features, gentlemen, I can say there'll be no war with China, but the problem is going to continue. And the problem will continue so long as Pakistan exists. Our problem is Pakistan. So, gentlemen, I will close now for this video. I hope you like it. Do share it with your friends, with your relations, and subscribe to my channel. I close now, sir, and say Jai Hind. God bless you all.